Hey everyone, welcome to this month's Fix My Hog event. I'm Tommy Clutch Creal, owner and operator of High Compression Garage and Chopper College. We're stoked to be working with Fix My Hog on this intro video to fabrication, and welcome aboard for all you viewers. A few things that we're going to cover today. We're going to go through some at-home fabrication projects you guys can do, also some little tips and tricks along the way, and also how to set up a nice little fab shop in your garage or work area, and save some money and cut some corners in making your bike unique to yourself as well. Before I kind of get into things, make sure below that button, you'll see a banner down there. We've got a spring and fall apparel sale going on, so make sure to check that out. And also hit that like or follow button on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and get some good knowledge through that as well. So thanks for joining again. And as you can see, I brought quite a bit of tools in the area, and we're going to be trying to go through quite a bit today. A little background on me for everyone who doesn't know about me. I've been building bikes for the past 15 years for celebrities, our former Vice President Joe Biden, and made a name for myself with my fabrication and craftsmanship. So you're in good hands, and we're going to be learning a lot today through this video. All right, so a little bit about some of the tools with fabrication. You might see a lot of guys on TV. Some of those shows, they're using like a flashing hammer, English reel, shrinker, and stretcher. I'm going to kind of bring it down one more level and go through some of the hand tools and go through these and show you how they work. And also, we're going to get into building a little seat pan and battery box for you at home. So, obviously, with anything we're doing with bikes, and if it's service or fabrication, we always want to make sure we've got all that protective gear. Respirator or face mask, earplugs are good. We get jamming on this flashing hammer, and your ears are beating like a heartbeat. So, make sure all that protective gear is on board. A few of the fab tools that we use around here, and I use on a daily basis with the guys, we have a lot of, these are the main sheet metal tools. So we have, these are called dollies. You got different dollies where you have heel, you have this one as well. These are mainly used on cutting and pounding corners into pieces, for instance, a gas tank. If you're making a gas tank, and you need to put a radius on a corner, and it's a tight radius, you take one of these, find the nice radius on whatever one may fit, and just get hammering away. That's one good thing about metal. There's not too much power you can put into it. We have teardrop mallets. These are the holy grail of sheet metal work and fabrication. These are of different sizes, as you can see. Not that one. All these. We have this end, which is going to put a small scar into the metal. This one more of a larger scar into the metal, and striking it through. We're using these. We've got a sandbag right here. You can use BBs in these as well, and you can also pick these up at probably your local store. But all we're doing with the metal on these, for instance, I got a C-pen right here. We're taking these through and hammering it all the way through to get us a radius. That's the purpose of these teardrop mallets, is to just continue to strike away and form that metal for us. On this end, we have anvil. This one is not used too much with a lot of the metal working, but the end of it right here, the toe, we do use as a replacement for these dollies too. Next up, we have some of the basic stuff. We got grinders, simple grinders. You're going to be using these a lot. I'm sure a lot of you may have these already at home. And some air tools. So we have air sander, and we have an air nibbler for actually cutting out the sheet metal. That's the easier way to cut out metal are hand shears. These hand shears will take a 18 gauge piece of metal and cut through it like butter. These are actually able to give you a pretty clean cut without too much grinding and deburring it on the other end. We also have, out of sight and out of your reach here, a sheet metal brake. They have a lot of benchtop sheet metal brakes for sale online, and benchtop ones where you can just bolt right to your wood bench. All the sheet metal brakes do is actually give you a clean, nice bend. For instance, on this do-it-yourself battery box, these two bends were done on a sheet metal brake. It took about 2 minutes to do it, set it up, and bend that metal directly how you want it. I've always loved working with metal because there's not too much you can ever take off or have on there, unlike wood. That's a little bit harder to work with because you need some more precise cuts and everything. So sheet metal brake is very useful, and they have them affordable at home as well. Also, bigger guys, good stuff to work with. The loud toys are planching hammer. This one is used for shrinking the metal. When I say shrinking the metal, as you'll see later on in the video, when we get actually beating the metal around, you'll see a lot of rivets or waves, we call them, into the side of the metal. That's the metal actually expanding. What we want to do is contract the metal and get it back to a workable form where we're going to butt it up to another piece. So what we do in this, we have an upper. This is pretty much all we're using. We have a few different dies, I should say, for the bottom. This is a flat die right there, but we also have some with different crowns. The crown on top of that is just determining your radius. If you're going to go for a smaller radius and a smaller curve, you're going to use a smaller anvil on the bottom. If you're going for a larger one, then you're going to use a larger crown on there. Right here, we've got a shrinker and stretcher. This does very similar work as a planching hammer does. The shrinker actually, all you're doing is pressing down the pedal here, and it's contracting the metal. Now, on the opposite end of shrinking it, the stretcher will actually expand the metal, which we want to do on some instances with gas tanks. When we build gas tanks and we're going towards the front of the gas tank, we want to open up the metal to butt up against the other panel that we're building. So this is very useful and very affordable at home as well. And then the English wheel. This is a smaller version, and actually an at-home version you can have. These are available on benchtop too. This is used to smooth out all those scars you've put in your metal. So when we get to actually beating the metal, teardrop mallets are used with the sandbag. After you have all those bumps and rivets in there, we roll it right through the English wheel and go with the grain of that and smooth that all out so it looks nice and pretty at the end. Also at the bottom of this, we have different anvils. So this will determine the radiuses again. This one is very slight. Hopefully you guys can see that. Very slight radius in there, but just enough to actually smooth it out. And then we have more severe radiuses for getting those corners in there. So keep in mind, this is a nice little tool to have. And a lot of the other ones we'll go through. A Beverly shear is something that you can get for a benchtop in your garage and simply cut right through the metal like butter with that. It helps cutting with more larger bends like this. This one we actually cut out of it with a Beverly shear, and you can hopefully see there's a lot of burrs up here on the sides that we're going to take down, but Beverly shear does leave a little bit of cleaning surface to get to at the end. So that's another nice piece. So just to recap and give you guys a rundown on some of these tools, there is a nice little package that I guess we could say right now that you could bring to your garage if you're trying to start to get into the trade of fabrication or craftsmanship, or even just try it out. You can get a set of teardrop mallets, dies, and a sandbag, and that'll get you going. And then also look at the benchtop English wheel, the box, sometimes you can call it a sheet metal brake, and then also a shrinker and stretcher. So those are good little pieces to have in your garage and even tinkering around with. You never know where this could go. But I'll tell you what, from experience, fabrication on motorcycles will definitely make your bike unique and give you a sense of pride and craftsmanship into doing that. So every bike we've built is handmade, including gas tanks and frames, and that goes to give you a lot of pride in what you're doing out there. So hopefully you guys are going to get a lot out of this. But jumping into a little bit of background on metal. When we're using metal, we typically use 16 or 18 gauge, just like wire. We're gauging the metal off the thickness. On motorcycles specifically, we're using about 16 gauge to 18 gauge all the time. We use 16 gauge on all our gas tanks, all our fenders, oil tanks, battery boxes. We'll use about 18 gauge. We don't ever get to 20 gauge just because of how thin it is, and it has the opportunity to kind of be brittle and break along the way, definitely on something like a rigid motorcycle rather than a soft tip. So I would highly suggest, if you're going to get into building your own seat pan, battery box, even going into fenders along the way, that you look at a 16 gauge metal. Another little thing about metal, when you're purchasing this, if you go to your local Menards, Home Depot, wherever you go, they have these in, I think, 48-inch by 48-inch slots. And you can purchase one of those for building your seat pan here. But when you do get your metal, every supplier of metal will give a different form on the front. So what I mean by that is there's some kind of film, protective lubricant on top of it, and you want to make sure that that's taken off before you do any of the metal work, allowing for instance, when you're laying down a weld on something, that it is a good working surface that you start with. For instance, our manufacturer sends it out with an oil coating, just to make sure it's not rusting. And upon delivery of all our metal, we've got to wipe it down, and we've got to get a good working surface right off the bat. Some of you may be wondering about aluminum. Good luck with that one. Aluminum's a whole different beast with working with it. I'm working with metal. It's a lot easier to control the metal when it's shrinking, stretching, forming on its own. With aluminum, one blow with the teardrop mallet, and you're pretty much you're stuck there. So aluminum has a brushed surface, as many of you guys know, and that will continue to show throughout the English wheel, planching hammer. But by no means am I saying that it can't be done. It's just a different type of metal to work with. So I would suggest using mild steel, not stainless steel, in picking your metals as well with fabrication. Point being is that with stainless, it's a lot harder for chrome to attach to it. For instance, if you're building a sissy bar or saddlebag supports, and you want to send that out to chrome later on, you're going to see a lot of cracking or stress cracks, they look like, because it's just not able to make through that whole chroming process of nickel, copper, chrome. So keep that in mind when picking your metals, that there are specific kinds. And also, feel free to put it in the question log with Fix My Hog. If you have a question on your metals, which one you should use, shoot us a quick question on that as well, and we'll be able to help you with that. All right, so at-home projects. I want to get going with some of this metal here. These tools are being quiet. So at-home projects, I would highly suggest working on a beginner's entry-level project, which would be a C-pan or a battery box. And from there, you can kind of get to different levels. For instance, this is one of our C-pans that we continually make. It's a one-piece C-pan. All we do is we put in the brake in the front. Obviously, you can see how we take all the film off the front, bend it, and then we've rolled this one through the English wheel to give us that nice little surface, nice little radius in there. Another one we have here, this is actually one that is going out to upholstery. What we've done on this one, again, cut it out, smoothed it out, and did a slight bend in here. A lot of times, if you're looking just to do a slight bend, just do it by hand. Or if you have a sheet metal brake at home, put it right under it and then start forming the metal. You can pretty much feel the metal. It sounds corny and cheesy, but you kind of get in with the metal and zone in, and you could feel where it fits and it doesn't. So work with the metal. It'll tell you what it needs to do. And then this is a copper one we did with rivets all in it. Copper's a different type to work with, but the other projects, battery boxes. These guys, you can take one right off your bike. If you've got, if you're working at home on a project and looking to swap it up, this would be something that you can really make unique and claim to be your own image, because it doesn't take too much to do this. And definitely for a beginner, building these boxes is quite easy. All you're going to be doing is putting a radius on the side, welding up the corners and making sure it's secure. You don't have to worry so much about doing a pressure test to it or air testing it to make sure it can hold liquid, as we do with gas tanks and oil tanks. But this is something that is a little bit easier along the way. Sissy bars, and I know we have a question on support linkage, what I'll get to. I'm going to cover, but handlebars, that's the other thing. Surprisingly enough, you see a lot of guys building handlebars. These are part of our in-home or in-house handlebars that we make. And this is 1.5 or 1.25, excuse me, outer diameter tubing going down to 1-inch grips. You can eventually make your own handlebars if you're a daredevil, if you're a good welder, and feel comfortable enough actually making those welds. This is a good project to do as well. And you can get a tubing bender from your local store that's relatively cheap to do that too. So take a look at that. Sissy bars. This thing right here, what you actually see is where we bend a lot of our sissy bars. That's simple. Welded this right into place. We determine our radiuses right off that, heat it up with our oxyacetylene, and then bend away. That's definitely an at-home project to do too, because it takes one piece of metal and tubing you can buy from your local hardware store, and get into that and put a couple welds on a bung, and you're golden and good to go. All right, I'm sure you guys have enough of me talking about this stuff, so we're going to get into using some of these tools now. So I've already cheated and cut out along the way a C-pan. This is made out of 18 gauge, and 18 is, I guess, the choice that we went with on this one. But when we're using some of these tools, obviously glasses is one big thing. There's a lot of burring and potential for all these metals to come up. If we wanted to put a radius in this metal right here, and say we want to be able to cushion it right around our back end, what we're going to start doing is working our way outwards. So same thing with gas tanks. When we build gas tanks and want a large radius on the outside, we work inward to outward, and that gives the metal the opportunity to expand. You got to realize that that metal is all molecules inside, so they start doing their own massacre of things internally and moving things around. So what we're going to start doing is start scoring the metal right here in the middle and go about 1 inch from the outside. And I'm going to start going around this area right here. And this will allow us to get that little pivot point in there. And you're going to make sure you're hitting on a good surface with this. Like I said, remember, you can put BB, sand, whatever you want into these shot bags. Now you can probably already see that was a flat piece of metal, and seeing how it's starting to take its own shape right there. This is where all the tools are going to start coming into play. So it's going to be a little rough to see that, but there are a lot of scoring marks on there. And you can probably do this for about 10, 15 minutes and get all the way around. But we're just going to do a side right here for today. Now you can really see how it's starting to to come up. This is where we're going to actually start taking the shrinker and pulling the metal together to get that lip to come up a little bit farther. Keep in mind, when you're using these tools, you got to kind of lay out a template. We've got many templates for the reoccurring products we make, and even using, if you're going to do it a one-time issue or one-time project at home, make sure you just make a quick template of it, because then you can refer back to that for use in kind of measuring things out. So now that we have some of this done, I could be doing this for the next 45 minutes. So we have some of that done. What we're going to do is shrink that metal, and you're going to see how it comes up and starts rotating around with the shrinker and stretcher. And what we're doing inside these shrinker and stretchers are jaws. So we want to make sure this is all the way inserted to the back. If we're going to come up that far, I'm going to actually just take this about ½ inch in and start working my way around that side. All you're doing is applying pressure to the pedal, and for the tabletop ones, you're going to have just a little lever that you're pulling down, a little handle. And this is going to start to smooth out that outside area. And this is really fun stuff when you get into doing this more often. So all we're doing is moving around, circular motion, and shrinking it up. Now, I'm sure y'all can see that. There's a big, big difference than when we first started on this side. That side was straight. Now we're actually starting to curve that metal around to form it to where we want. You can continue to do that all the way around and get this outer lip put into place. But I'm going to just do it a couple more times to get us flush all the way down to about here and all the way back there. And we should be rocking. We should be golden on this one. Now with the stretcher, if we actually want to go the opposite way and stretch the metal out, we would do the same process all the way through. And eventually we will use the stretcher on this, because we're going to be consolidating a lot of that metal right there. And we'll use that to spread it out a little bit on the outside. You can also hopefully see there's no waves put into this. So it's pretty much straight on the outside. If we did another couple passes with that, this would be turned up a little bit. It'd be looking pretty good. All right, I want to show you a few things on the English wheel here. Wow, we're buzzing right through time. When setting up an English wheel, I highly suggest, this is one really wicked tool to have at home. Get one of the benchtop ones, start working with the metal. I call one of these things a finger jammer because I got flat fingers from the get between those wheels. So when using this, put some WD-40 on the wheels, your main wheel and your anvil. And what we're going to do, there's a little gap in between the two wheels here. Hopefully you can see that. We're going to start using the bottom handle, bringing it up. We're going to spin the main wheel just till they touch. Oh no, just like that. Now that bottom wheel's caught on there. We're actually going to work in ½ inch increments, turning that wheel as we go through. So to start on an English wheel, cup your fingers like this, get them out of the way, get them way out of there. And you're going to actually spin this front wheel and just get it right in there. And you can see it's rocky, moving all around, right on those scarring points that we made. Right there. That's a dead spot right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a ½ inch turn, tighten it all the way up, and we're going to work with the metal. And what I mean by that is that you'll feel that it's starting to catch sometimes. Let the metal go with the grain, quote unquote, of the metal. So we're going to lock our fingers in onto this, and we're just going to start going back and forth. All we're doing is letting the equipment, as I tell the guys, let the equipment do the work. You just be the mastermind behind it. You can see how that's shaking a little bit, but it's actually coming out. And if you need to get over to this side, turn it, and do the same thing. Come on right through and start rocking with it. So I'm going to crank it down another quarter turn and get a good little smooth piece in here. And that actually is turning out a lot quicker than anticipated. So now looking at this corner right here, this is the corner that we did the shrinker on. We shrunk all this down. It's going to start to expand again. So hopefully all goes right. It's actually going to have the waves. You're going to see slight waves in this because the metal is expanding. When we're applying pressure to this metal right now, what it's doing is expanding all those molecules and trying to escape. By no means am I a chemist, but I do know that stuff about metallurgy. We'll move this on there. Keep working it all the way around. And notice our bottom anvil, we're using a slightly smaller crown. What I'll do is I'll pop in a larger crown. You can see how that works. But now it's not so rocky. We're actually smoothing out all those scoring marks. And before, we had a lot of, doing my best to show you guys here. It's a lot smoother back here now than it was before. So there's a big difference between this flat spot and right here, there's actually a component where it's butted out. So, and then to get your piece of metal back into this, you're gonna wanna loosen it back up, do the same thing with that wheel. I'm gonna show you real quick, a larger crown wheel that we have for this bottom one. As you can see on that one, that's a pretty wicked bend in there. So we're gonna use this one. And this will give us a drastic difference in that metal. Now doing battery boxes and stuff with the English wheel, I don't know how crazy some of you want to get with your at-home projects, but definitely possible to get into it with a battery box. If you're looking to, for say, make a dome-looking one, all you're going to do is take your end caps, and this is if you're following these standards of building a box, keep in mind, but you're going to make your end caps right here as domes, cut out a piece of metal with a little extra metal on the ends for grinding and also for that metal to shrink down. That's another tip for you when cutting these things out, or any component with fabrication. Make sure you cut a little bit extra. It's a lot easier to take it down with a grinder, a shear, whatever you're using to take that down, but put a little extra. So with that dome, you're just going to make that one piece on the outside here and run it through the English wheel. It's a lot smaller piece for say like this. Put it on, make your scarring points and get that to a point where you like the radius on it, and work it through the flashing hammer, shrink it on the ends all the way around, and then run it through the English wheel to get a nice smooth surface on the outside. Like I said, this is probably the fun part about the job of building bikes, is doing all this stuff by hand. So, all right, we're gonna do this a little bit more. I'm gonna jump over some other projects to try to get as much in as we can for you guys here today. Like I said, 1/4 inch increments. Same thing with the bench tops. You're gonna have the same thing. And again, you got a pretty wicked bend. So kind of to recap, if you're doing a seat pan, if you're doing battery box at a dome, the main tools that you're going to use your teardrop mallets. Those again are to put a lot of scoring marks in it to start giving you that radius. Then you're going to move on to the shrinker and stretcher. start shrinking down all those waves on the end and get that metal more consolidated to work with. And pretty much what we can say is that this is your finalizing tool. This is going to, outside of grinding and getting prepped for paint or powder coat, is going to be the English wheel, getting all those bumps and giving you a nice looking pretty end cap to it. So if you're going to look for something to save a few bucks on and modify your bike up, I highly recommend doing a seat paint. It's pretty simple. You can cut it out to your own specs. You can even do a two-piece. We've done these in two pieces where we cut right here, and from there just welding them on together. So that's where I recommend kind of going with at home. So that battery box, and later on getting to that daredevil stuff of building tanks and things, where you'll need bucks, and a buck is pretty much a template for gas tanks. Which, real quick, this is a buck we built for one of our tanks. And what we did with this is actually, this is more for a bobberish style. But we've taken wood and cut the radiuses that we want for the top right here, and to have it step down, go into here to the sides. So when we're working with the metal, we're not just guesstimating where we need to go with it. You can actually work with the metal, bring it right up to this, and say, all right, we need to work on this back section a little bit more, this front section a little bit more, and get it to follow the contour of this buck. If you do get into doing gas tanks, this would definitely, for beginners, make one of these guys and just use it as your template, your navigational or road map. And by the end of it, you'll come out with something pretty cool. I can guarantee you that. All right. Oh, what do we got next on? We've got, we're doing these battery boxes, all right? Just say you're looking to make a sissy bar battery box, whatever it may be. At some point in that fabrication process, you're going to need to weld something or bond something together in some shape or fashion. And obviously, it's in our industry, it's welding. Those are just what we do. So right here, I've got a MIG welder and a TIG welder. Primarily, we're using MIG. We always use gas on our MIG instead of flux core, which is the gas comes out in the wire. This one, we're just running straight gas through it. That is just mostly used on tacking things together. If we want a more precise, more glamorous looking weld that looks pretty darn good, we're going to use our TIG because we can control that weld a lot more. With TIG, it can be a little bit harder just due to the fact that we have a foot pedal or you have a finger trigger. You've got filler metal at the same time, and you have to be able to watch the metal at the pace it's burning and make sure you're filling enough metal in there along the way. There's a lot more to it with choosing your correct tungsten, choosing the correct filler metal. So if any of you were to ask what is the, let's say, best welder to start out with, and just for not welding that ever before, I would highly suggest using a MIG, because pick it right up, get a gas, and if you're going to try flux core, just make sure you're getting penetrating welds. But get that thing set up at home, dial it up to the company's recommended gauge, and just lay a couple of tacks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you real quick tacking this into place, this battery box. And we've already pre-cut, obviously, these pieces of metal, so they fit right on the outside of here. Let's see which one's going to work for us right now. We'll use this side. So we're going to bend this up a little bit. Yeah, that's going to be this one. So we're going to tack this, overlap the metals, and use the metal as our filler with the TIG. And then for the MIG, we're just going to lay a couple quick tacks down. Now, when doing a sissy bar, like I mentioned, what you're going to do is lay a full bead all the way around your mounting points on there. I know someone had a question about support linkage for your saddlebag, for instance, and we make tons of those. There is, number one, you're going to probably want to use like a 10-18 mild steel 5/8 diameter piece of round bar, sorry. And the reason being is that is a thicker metal, and depending on the size of your saddlebags, you don't have to worry about any stress fractures going through on that. So I would recommend that metal for you on that. But with sissy bars, same thing. You're going to make mounting points on there, and you're going to want to lay full beads around. So with MIG, you're going to have to make sure that heat is turned up, slow down your wire speed a little bit, so you're burning it not too quickly, but just enough not to melt all the way through, and start working your way around the C-cupping. And then also, if you were doing that with TIG, the good part about this is you're able to control your heat, or quote-unquote amperage, coming out of there to burn through it. So I'm going to, let's see, we got enough time? Yeah, we got enough time. We're going to pull through, and I'm going to turn the MIG one up for this. Now, this isn't, we pre-label our welders to know what gauge we can go to. I'm going to actually turn this one, the heat way down. Yeah, you can hear the metal working when you want it to. Obviously, always make sure you have your hood when welding. And with fabrication, this is your end step. If you're not doing a one piece or anything that would require welding, that would be it. But with welding, this is going to be our pretty much last thing besides grinding that down. All right, so you want about 1/8 of an inch of the wire showing. What I'm going to do, you can use wire cutters to do that, but just get it right to where we want it, right there. Now, placing these pieces together, and make sure they're secure. They're not going to wobble or do anything. We're going to lay down tacks, and what I mean by that is when you're actually welding the metal, it's obviously distorting and trying to go its own way with the heat. So with this one, we'd like to make a tack right here, and same thing on this side, prevent it to go inside the side on there. So I'm going to move this little guy back here. And with MIG welding, you can actually use magnets, which is it's just out of reach from me here, but I would actually use a magnet to hold this piece together. TIG welding, you can't use magnets because keep in mind that pulse with that area you have there is actually going to be drawn to the magnet rather than your working surface. So, all right, lay down 2 tacks. Now you can hear that jumping. That's not what you want by any means. I mean, it's not penetrating, it's just jumping around on there. You can see that tack is actually, hopefully you can see it, it's not melted through, it's just on the outside. You may see that if you're a beginning welder, that's on the outside, you didn't penetrate any of the metal. So keep that in mind. You want to make sure you're penetrating the metal all the way through. That's the sound you want to hear. That's working for us right there. So that actually went through. You don't have a big blob like that on the top. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. And you're going to have to get used to working with your welder. You can actually listen to it and know when it's actually penetrating, and sometimes when it's just hopping around. So a lot of these fabrication tools too, you're just going to have to get used to using them and what they're capable of doing. So if you're using your teardrop mallet and you see that you drop down to a different size, it'll work just as good to do that. Shears, let the equipment do the work for you. Same thing with the welders. Just let them do the work for you. So we got our 2 tacks right here. What we do at this point, we lay full bead all the way around, and then just take air grinder, electric grinder with a larger grip, and get that brought down to a workable surface for us. Touching on grinders, take a step back on this one. The higher number you have on grit numbers is the finer type of sanding tool it is. So when you're first starting to bring down your welds, if you have a larger weld and it's not flush, you want to use a lower grip. For instance, in a 36 and 80 grit we have right here. So I would use a 36, start bringing that down, work the metal down, and then start jumping up to higher grips to get a nice final touch. And at the end of your piece that you're actually crafting, you want to make sure there's not any scoring marks, there's not any areas on there that would come through if you're getting the piece chrome, for instance, or powder coated. Reason being is that it's going to show right through. So what you're sending out is what you're going to get back. So if you see a big divot in there, fill it with your welder and grind that down to a smooth surface. I'm a perfectionist here, and everyone knows that I can be a little bit over the top on making sure every little detail is good, but in the long run, it pays off. So when doing that, make sure the piece is going out is the piece you want coming back. So with MIG welding, hopefully that helps a little bit with just tacking it and getting your pieces together. Like I said, that's going to be probably your go-to machine if you wanted to start doing this in your garage. Just pick one up, and a 180 is definitely a good size for your garage, and definitely right in a good price range, I think, considerably. All right, now with our good old TIG machine. This is what we're going to be doing a lot of the fine details with our sissy bars, our handlebars, for instance. Let's see how close we can get you in on this one. All those were TIG weld on the outside. Same thing on here. We have to do very little grinding. The best part about TIG welding is that your finish is pretty much there. When we go under on our handlebars, you'll see that same thing with finish. So if you're looking to do something along this caliber in your garage or on your bike, may not be a bad idea and you don't feel comfortable with TIG welding, it may not be a bad idea to send it out and let them weld it up. But again, that'll provide something unique for you. TIG welding, all right. Let's get the other cap on here. Right down here, I actually have a foot control, and you can start seeing numbers fluctuating down here. This is going to be actually controlling our torch right here. I've got the unit grounded out. All I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap the metal together so we can use the metal to fill itself right here. Use gloves. Definitely use gloves. I don't like personally using them right after that, but we're going to control. We've got it at 90 amps. I'm going to probably put it around 30, and we're going to tack weld this right on the outside. This piece, of course, doesn't fit, but we're going to make it work. We didn't get enough metal on that one, so take it back. I didn't overlap it enough. Otherwise, we're going to be using filler. Normally, I'd be using the filler rod right now and setting this work surface up so it's not moving on me. But this is an easier way of doing things, cleaner way. Again, on the back end there, just a nice little clean tack. You're good to go. You see a lot of people in the industry using their TIG welders all the time. It's kind of their go-to tool, fun tool to work with. So give you a rundown now. Rundown on just what we went through here. when you're doing sheet metal fabrication specifically on your bike, kind of a step or a guide for you. You want to pick the right tools to work with. You want to keep in mind lay out your vision. So at the end of the day, you know what you're building and have that template in place. It involves various stages. So you're going to be starting with a raw form, working through it, and then finishing stage. When you get to that finishing stage, remember what I said about those grits, that different type of finishing area. You want to make sure that piece going out is what you want to see in return. And also, you know, I know specifically for myself and many of the guys I work with is that you take a lot of pride in these pieces. So I always view it, you give that powder coater or that chrome your piece, and they're looking at and critiquing it. So take your time with this. There's fabrication is no rush for me. Building a gas tank even takes maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 days. You see guys speeding right through it on TV, but you know, it really doesn't take that long to do that. So kind of run down and take your time with that. I know there's a few questions that kind of came through upcoming to this video, and some questions I've encountered along the way, and I'll bring those up now. One of them I kind of got to was what type of welder is best for beginners. That welder, like I said, is the MIG welder, just for the purpose that you can really sting it, the stinger. You can learn it pretty quickly. You have 2 gauges to work with for your wire speed and your heat. And from there, it's just getting used to the machine and how it works. So once you grind those welds down, and you really don't see them, but keep working on that. And if you're looking to kind of make an entryway into this industry, make a hobby out of this, or just doing it a couple of times, I would encourage you to get a welder along the way so you can tinker around with that as well. Another question that came in was, what's the best beginner project? And I've had this in the past too with people. I think it's all based on the person, not necessarily the project. So if you're looking to save a few bucks or even want to be able to say, hey, I built that gas tank, or I built that sissy bar, or C-pan, I would encourage you to start with something to build your confidence up on the level of maybe a C-pan or a battery box. Battery box, keep in mind, is going to take some welding experience, but that is an easier way of going. C-pan, the good part about this is you just have to weld a few things if you want to. Otherwise, you build your C-pan, cut out the template, form the metal, and send it out to upholstery. So there's, like I said, there's different approaches and different projects for people. I know there's people in the past that have come up and said, I want to build a sissy bar, and out of all chain link, and that's, you got to weld each one individually. So give yourself some slack if you're really coming into this as a new kind of a beginner. Give yourself some slack and work up to different projects. And get used to the tools. I can never say that enough, is let the tools do their work and get used to that. Another question that we had come in, cost to make versus aftermarket cost. And that one again varies, but I think that's the level of craftsmanship or artistry into what we do. Is you can definitely, instead of buying a $250 seat or $300 seat, build your own C-pan, send it out. Or for those daredevils, building a set of handlebars and sending those out. It doesn't take that much to build those, but a lot of considerations along the way. And something that just hit me, if you're building a set of handlebars and you're drilling out for internal wiring, or you're using a fly-by-wire throttle on there, and you're going to run right through those bars, make sure you deburr everything. One of the biggest kind of things to put in your tool belt as a fabricator is files. You're going to deburr everything that you go through. Same thing on C-pans. You're going to deburr everything so they don't come through. But on those handlebars, that is something that you want to make sure of, because all it takes is one piece of metal to catch a wire, and all of a sudden you're grounding that power wire out, or or splicing it in half, and you've got a little fire under your seat there. So keep that in mind. Another one, can you make a career out of this trade? And I love this one. Absolutely. You can definitely make a career out of this. It all depends on what you get into. If you get into building gas tanks or even smaller projects, someone comes into your little shop at home, your garage, and says, hey, can you build this for me or fabricate this for me? You could start that way, but I wouldn't suggest jumping right into it and saying, hey, I'll make a career out of this, because it does take time to get up to an advanced level, or get moving to where you feel comfortable making anything for people. And I'm the first one to say, and by no means a master, no means an expert in this, even though other people classify me as, but there's always something new to learn along the way. When we're building things, and you're building things at home, you're going to figure out, hey, I didn't know that before, or offer something else up to people. It's that kind of pay it forward attitude in our industry, and it's all you know. Motorcycle industry is one of the best, so you're always learning new things along the way. With that, what's a good starter kit of tools for this? I covered this briefly when we first started this live event, and I guess it depends on what you're building. But if you want a wide variety of tools and equipment to use, I would highly suggest using benchtop tools. They're more cost effective. They're affordable on that end, and you can get a feel for things, and always upgrade beyond that. I wouldn't suggest getting a $1,500 planishing hammer and saying, okay, I'm going to go into this and see what happens. So if you want a list of pieces of tools or equipment to get, it's again the teardrop mallets. It's going to be the sandbag or shop bag. It all depends. Different vendors call it different things. Hammer and dollies. These are the dollies again, where we can beat against these and get a different radius. There are also hammers out there that are shrinking hammers, which if you're putting this dolly on top of your shop bag like this, and you're pulling your corner over, and I don't have one in sight here, but we can actually, the hammer has pretty much circular area on the inside, which will shrink the metal as well. So if you're not up to getting a whole shrinking, stretching unit, you can always just get a shrinking hammer and start working the metal that way and upgrade from there. And then an English wheel. English wheel is another good little go-to tool, and what you can make is endless on those things. So this is a nice little piece, and they do come affordable. So add that to your little repertoire in your garage or shop, and get going with that. And then last would be a lot of assortment of air tools. You want to make sure you have a good grinder, good bits, files, as I mentioned with the handlebars, and then some kind of form of cutting the metal. We use side cutters and the Pexto shear sometimes, but there are different kinds. So make sure you have a good way and effective way of cutting that metal, I should say. So those would be the big things. You can always upgrade beyond that. And then we had another question that I touched on it quickly about the materials you'd recommend fabricating saddlebag supports. Question is the type of material to build a saddlebag, going into a sissy bar, supports, and things like that. I said 1018 is a good metal to go to. Make sure it's not stainless steel. It's a mild steel, more carbon in the steel, and that way the reason being is you can form it a lot easier, and then the finishing is that much easier. You can use anywhere from any diameter that you want, but do keep in mind that if you are using this as a backrest and sissy bar along with your luggage bags or saddlebags, that you want a heavier gauge, and you want to make sure your supports for that are in place too. And to expand on that, with sissy bars, if you're building those out, you have two bungs on the side that you welded on and said, hey, that's good enough. keep in mind that thing is going to tip right backwards. So you're going to need another area to support that piece going into a flange or somewhere else on your rear fender, and from there you should be able to have enough strength behind those supports to support anyone in the back behind you, or luggage if you're putting it back there as well. So keep that in mind as you're building anything, fabricating anything. I like to make sure we go over the top on safety with it, that we don't have anything back. I've never had a bike back, and that's for the reason that we take our time, we go through it. We certainly want to make sure that it's top-notch quality, and I think that's a good thing to share with you guys, is that you want to make sure that everything is secure. You can never do it too much. You can never go overboard, I should say, and make sure everything's in place. So all in all, I'll tell you, fabrication is a fun part of the motorcycle industry, and I know a lot of people personally that just go out and buy certain components and do their add-ons or cosmetic touch-ups, and I don't know, they've shared with me in the past that it's difficult to get in the fabrication industry because they don't have the confidence or just don't have the knowledge. And I can tell you from experience that once you kind of get into it, you're hooked. You're hooked like riding. You just start working with the tools, and you kind of put your head down to the grindstone and start making your battery box or your seat pans, sissy bar, luggage racks, things like that. And make your own templates or models as you go. If you have a wood top bench, as I told someone in the past, I'm like, if you have wood top bench, take a circular tire, for instance, and from like a lawnmower, and use that as a guiding tool, a steel one, and that's your radius that you'll get around it. So a lot of it is just kind of thinking out of the box and definitely do it. But encourage a lot of you guys to give it a whirl and hopefully find a passion and enjoy doing that. It's a big part of our industry is obviously doing this metal work. So hopefully everyone, you guys all enjoyed this segment on fabrication and gathered a lot out of it. And make sure you go on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and like and follow all those pages, fixmyhog.com, with additional videos. I know we got a video up there for preventing motorcycle front end wobble. So check that out. And then that spring and fall apparel sale, you got to get it while it lasts. So go for it. Thanks, guys, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thanks.